In early January 1953, Northern Europe was quietly enduring winter. Along the coast of the Netherlands, Belgium, and eastern England, communities were still rebuilding from the scars of the Second World War. Many towns relied on centuries-old dikes and levees to protect them from the North Sea, but years of neglect and limited resources had left these defenses weak. The relationship between humans and the sea had always been delicate, a balance built over generations, and on this night that balance would shatter. Far to the northwest, near Iceland, a deep low-pressure system began forming on January 29th. Meteorologists of the time recognized it as a fast-developing storm, but weather forecasting in the early 1950s was rudimentary and most coastal residents had no idea what was approaching. This weather bomb intensified rapidly, producing hurricane-force winds that pushed massive amounts of water toward the southern North Sea. The timing could not have been worse. The storm coincided with a high spring tide when the gravitational pull of the sun and moon combined to create unusually high sea levels. The geography of the North Sea acted like a natural amplifier. Its funnel shape, narrowing between Britain and the Netherlands, forced the surging waters into a smaller area, increasing the height of the tide. By the night of January 31st, the sea level in some locations rose to more than 5.6 meters above normal, or nearly 18 feet. The winds continued to lash the surface, creating waves that crashed against fragile dikes already weakened by age and wartime neglect. Communication failures made matters worse. Radio broadcasts were limited, especially overnight, and few warnings reached the people sleeping in coastal villages. In Zeeland, Essex, and Lincolnshire, the residents were unaware that a monstrous surge was racing toward them. Every mile of coastline became a potential disaster zone, and when the water finally struck, it would come with virtually no warning. By the evening of January 31st, the stage was set. Tens of thousands of people would face one of the deadliest natural disasters of the 20th century. The North Sea, long both a source of sustenance and danger, was about to unleash its full fury on Europe, and no one could escape its reach. As darkness fell on January 31st, 1953, the storm surge finally reached the coast of eastern England and the Netherlands. In Lincolnshire, Norfolk, and Essex, the sea did not rise slowly. It surged violently, breaching dikes that had been trusted for centuries. Over 1,200 breaks appeared in Britain's sea defenses, and icy water poured into villages before most residents even realized the danger. In some towns, water levels rose so quickly that people had only minutes to escape or find shelter. On Canvey Island, the rising waves overwhelmed the seawall. Thousands of prefabricated homes built after the war and offering almost no resistance were instantly flooded. Residents scrambled to attics and rooftops, clinging to furniture or each other as the freezing water poured in. In one small village, an 80-year-old woman survived 3 days trapped on her dining table, clinging desperately to life as the tide refused to recede. Entire streets were transformed into rivers of icy water, carrying debris and livestock along with the people who had tried to stay behind. Across the North Sea, the Netherlands faced an even larger catastrophe. Much of Zeeland and the surrounding provinces lie below sea level, protected only by a complex network of dikes and canals. Between 4 and 6 in the morning, as the first light of day approached, the dikes began to fail. Water rushed in with terrifying force, sweeping away houses and farmland in minutes. Entire villages vanished under the relentless surge, while residents fled to higher ground or climbed into attics, praying that someone would come to rescue them. Tragically, the destruction was swift and deadly. People were caught off guard, many trapped in homes or knocked into the frigid floodwaters. Stories of survival were harrowing. Families holding on to one another for hours in freezing water, neighbors carrying each other to safety, and the haunting memory of those who could not escape. By the time the tide began to recede, thousands of homes had been destroyed, and the full scale of human suffering was only beginning to become apparent. By February 1st, 1953, the sun rose on a landscape unrecognizable to those who had fallen asleep just hours before. Towns were submerged under cold, murky waters, and roads and bridges had been destroyed, cutting off communication and complicating rescue efforts. In the Netherlands, approximately 9% of all farmland was underwater, leaving crops ruined and livestock stranded. Across eastern England, around 160,000 acres of land were swamped, including homes, schools, and churches, leaving thousands homeless in the dead of winter. The human cost was staggering. In the Netherlands, 1,836 people lost their lives, while in the United Kingdom, 307 died on land with additional casualties at sea. Belgium, Scotland, and other coastal areas also suffered losses, bringing the combined death toll to nearly 2,500. Entire communities were displaced, and survivors faced freezing temperatures, contaminated water, and the constant threat of disease. Relief agencies struggled to provide food, blankets, and clean drinking water, often using boats to navigate streets that had become canals. Rescue operations were immediate but perilous. In the UK, 30,000 military personnel and volunteers were deployed to help save those trapped in homes or stranded on rooftops. In the Netherlands, local fishermen became first responders, navigating flooded streets in small boats to pull neighbors to safety. Makeshift shelters were set up in schools, churches, and town halls, offering the only refuge from the ongoing cold and wet conditions. The psychological impact was profound. Families had lost everything: homes, possessions, and loved ones. Survivors described waking up to floating furniture, trapped animals, and water gushing through kitchens and living rooms. For children, the terror of clinging to a parent in freezing water was a memory that would last a lifetime. Communities mourned collectively while also beginning the monumental task of cleaning, repairing, and rebuilding in the face of what seemed like an insurmountable disaster. The devastation of the 1953 North Sea flood forced governments and engineers to rethink the way coastal protection was approached. In the Netherlands, the disaster led directly to the creation of the Delta Commission, a specialized task force charged with designing a system capable of preventing such widespread flooding in the future. Over the next 4 decades, this initiative resulted in the Delta Works, an extensive network of dams, sluices, locks, dikes, and storm surge barriers. The Oosterscheldekering, the largest of these structures, spans nearly 2 miles and features massive gates that can be closed to block incoming storm surges, a marvel of modern engineering and a cornerstone of Dutch flood defense. In the United Kingdom, authorities also moved to strengthen coastal resilience. The flood prompted the establishment of the Storm Tide Warning Service, a system designed to provide early alerts to communities at risk of coastal flooding. The event was also the primary catalyst for the Thames Barrier, a massive movable gate system completed in 1974 to protect central London from high tides and storm surges. These projects demonstrated that even after catastrophic loss, human ingenuity could create solutions capable of mitigating future disasters. Beyond construction, the flood influenced planning, policy, and awareness. Towns and cities revised building codes to ensure homes could better withstand sudden flooding. Emergency management procedures were overhauled, emphasizing evacuation plans, emergency shelters, and coordination between military, civil authorities, and local volunteers. In both the Netherlands and the UK, education programs were introduced to teach citizens how to respond in the event of another large-scale flood. The legacy of the 1953 flood extends even today. The structures and systems built in response have successfully prevented major casualties in subsequent storms and serve as a global model for flood management. Engineers and planners worldwide study these projects, applying lessons learned to vulnerable coastlines in Asia, North America, and other regions at risk of storm surges. While the flood itself was a tragedy, it catalyzed a transformation in how humans coexist with the sea, turning disaster into enduring innovation and resilience. The 1953 North Sea flood was not only a story of destruction, but also a testament to human courage and resilience. In the immediate aftermath, communities across the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Belgium faced impossible challenges. Families clung to rooftops for hours, entire towns were cut off by water, and livestock floated helplessly through flooded pastures. Despite the chaos, ordinary people became heroes. Fishermen navigated icy waters to rescue stranded neighbors. Neighbors supported each other through freezing nights, and volunteers from distant towns brought supplies to those isolated by the rising tide. Recovery took months and in some cases years. Entire villages had to be rebuilt from scratch. Farmland had to be drained and fertilized, and infrastructure restored. Governments quickly learned that rebuilding was not enough. Stronger defenses and better planning were essential. The lessons from 1953 led to permanent changes in flood management, early warning systems, and public preparedness programs, ensuring that future generations would be far better protected. The human cost was sobering. Nearly 2,500 people lost their lives, but the experience forged a stronger, more united response to natural disasters. Communities that survived the flood retained vivid memories of the event, passing down stories of survival and heroism to ensure history would not be forgotten. memorials were built, and annual commemorations honor both the victims and the bravery of rescuers. Today, the North Sea coastlines are safer thanks to massive engineering projects like the Delta Works in the Netherlands and the Thames Barrier in England. Yet the flood remains a stark reminder of nature's power and unpredictability, showing that even in highly developed regions, human life can be profoundly vulnerable to the forces of the sea. The 1953 North Sea flood continues to inspire scientists, engineers, and emergency planners to innovate and prepare, turning a devastating catastrophe into enduring lessons of resilience, foresight, and human ingenuity.